Hey, college sports fans, we are previewing the entire Clemson preseason position by position. And as we do that, we are getting into the best all time at each position as well. Today, we're going to dig into the offensive line. So you got to hunker down for this one.
I'm Daniel Shirley. I love offensive line play, but I will be honest about it. It's probably the least I know about football, right? The least position that I know about the sport. But I do know how important it is. We know how important these guys have been to this program's success, and we'll try to nail these if we can. We might miss some, and that's what that again, this is fun. We're not saying this is a definitive list by any means. This is just kind of us debating who we think are the best, and if we miss some, let us know in the comments.
There you go. I'm Bill Zimmerman. This is the Reign Supreme All A podcast. We are into season 4. We're trying to do something big here as the off season moves into the preseason, and the preseason is moving into the actual season where things are going to get started on the field with a big game, and an offensive line that will return mostly intact. And we will get into those guys in a little while, but we tend to start these episodes off with the all-time greats, and we're going to do that this time as well. Just a little bit more about our method to our madness. We've got kind of two groups here, and neither group is in any kind of particular order. They're just kind of separated as the best ever and the almost the best ever, something between Hall of Very Good and Hall of Fame for that second group of guys. So let's get into that. And I think one guy, uh, well, we'll get into someone I learned a lot about while doing the research for this episode. I was familiar with the name, but had no idea just the impact that he had made on the field. But one guy who jumps off of that second group of greats there is John Simpson. Played from 2016 to 2019, starting to make a little bit of a name for himself in the NFL. Just about everybody on this list was a first-team All-American from a reputable source. Simpson had 29 starts among his 15 games and took more than 2,000 snaps for the Tigers. Wish I had a ton of stats. We'll have some stats scattered around through this, but Simpson's presence, man, was just unmistakable on some very good teams for the Tigers. Couple of national championships to his credit.
Yeah, and I'll never forget. I know it wasn't a championship winning team, but the team that played LSU in the championship game, the game before that, that hard fought, physical, dramatic game at Ohio or against Ohio State.
Yeah.
And after the game, they zoom in on him and one of the other linemen, and they're just on the field, just in tears of what that meant to them to get back to that point. And I think you saw he was a leader on this group, on this team, and with this program, and for that group, and just a tremendous football player.
Yeah.
Again, you mentioned the NFL. He is becoming more of a name in the NFL. That's not what this is. This is what he did at Clemson and what these guys did at Clemson, and he certainly did a lot at Clemson. Won a lot of games, and had a lot of big blocks for this team.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, while we're on Simpson and his era, a lot of really good names aren't making this list, and that's been the case at every position. Be sure to subscribe at youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. It's free. It's the best place to catch all our episodes, and it's the best place for you to comment with your reactions, right? But some of those guys, Jordan McFadden, Justin Falconelli, you can even go to like the era with like Eric Harmon, Brandon Thomas, Dalton Freeman, so many guys. Thomas Austin, my goodness, like what a difference maker he was. I did get some stats on Austin. 316 knockdowns, 39 starts, and 48 games played, more than 2,500 snaps for Austin. Still a big Thomas Austin fan, always will be, no matter what comes this way, that way, the other. A couple of first-team All-Americans that didn't make the list, Dalton Freeman and Dave Thompson. Tony Berryhill was a first-team All-ACC guy that didn't make it. Jeff Bostic doesn't quite get onto this list. I mean, a storied name at offensive line, which just tells you the quality of the guys who did make this list. I had to go back all the way to late 1950s for Lou Cordellione. First guy to be both a first team All-American and a first round draft pick. You got to make mention of him. No stats back in those days. If you happen to know more about Luke Orteleone, I sure hope you'll go to youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff and plug something in there. Or if you just want to argue about who we included and who we didn't. One guy I
That's fine
remember.
too, right? That's
Yeah.
good. We're
Hey,
okay with
that
that.
we're here for that. Absolutely. We don't pretend to know it all, but we do our homework and we put the best out there that we can. Uh, One of the reasons we don't know a lot about offensive line is I think you and I, when we were on campus, you combine our weights and we don't add up to this guy, Jeb Flesh, who was just an absolute world beater out there in just the heyday and the end of that Danny Ford era. Uh, First team All American, 267 knockdowns, made 45 starts out of his 48 career games played and 2,657 plays. And goodness, did he just absolutely bring it every game, every quarter, every possession.
Yeah, Bill, it's funny, when we were growing up, the offensive line at Clemson was one of the focal points of the team, but they still weren't household names, right? They weren't guys who went on to have big NFL careers. I mean, you mentioned, the Bostics, but yeah, I mean, it's even though we weren't the biggest guys in the world, but what the offensive line meant back in those days. And even with what Dabo Swinney has done with this program, and the offense is more of a passing offense, it is still a run first offense. And when they've had successful seasons, they've run the ball well first. And we saw them get back to that a little bit more last year. So, we'll see what the guys become after this. But, there's a lot of big names on this list. You mentioned Jeb Flesh. Jeb Flesh was a really good player, and just misses out on that top four group.
Yeah, and the rest of the line had some issues, or maybe not those years, but as those Danny Ford guys cycled out and the new guys came in, they struggled. But Flesh really was there through '91, so a couple of seasons under Ken Hatfield, and really to me, he stood out as not part of the problem, shall we say? I'll mention John Phillips real quick, '84 to '87, another first team All American from a major source, 245 knockdowns, 32 starts, 47 games overall. I love this trend that a lot of these guys like rotated through back in the day. Like you didn't ride the same five guys for 60, 70,
Right.
80 snaps. I don't think anybody was pulling off 80 snaps back then anyway. 2,330 plays under his belt nonetheless. And you did see a lot of these guys really rack up some individual totals. And then the one guy, here's the one I really learned a lot about, and the only guy on this screen throughout this episode who didn't quite get first team All-American status, but he was a two-time Remington Award finalist. And to me, a little bit of equivalency, GPA or SAT score, we'll bring that in. And it's Kyle Young, who now is one of the assistant ADs, very much a strong presence in the Clemson athletics front office. His son now a reserve on the offensive line for the Tigers, and we'll see how he develops, and be good to see him start getting out there and getting some snaps as well. Kyle Young, as I was looking through this list, I did not see anyone else but him with 400 plus knockdown blocks recorded, and that's a stat that through the years it doesn't go as far back as some of these '80s guys. It doesn't go up to today. It was only kept for a limited time, but that just jumped off the page at me. And a three-time academic All-American, which explains why he's so capable in that Clemson front office as well. Played from '88 to 2001, and still a major factor on campus.
Yeah, and again, kind of overlooked, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like you said, I mean, not a huge name that, and I think that's kind of the life of an offensive lineman, right?
Hmm.
It's kind of like being a catcher in baseball. You're going to be overlooked because that's your job is to do the dirty work. It's not to score touchdowns. It's not to make headlines. You hear it all the time during during broadcasts. The only good time we call an offensive lineman's name is when they do something wrong, and that's true. I mean, that is absolutely part of being the life of of being an offensive lineman. So I do like what these guys have done through the years. Kyle Young was a good player, right?
Yeah.
And But was he ever a quote great player? I mean, again, offensive line. How do you know that unless you're studying the offensive line play every day? I would think the coaches who coached him back then would say he was a great player and meant a lot to that team. I would think the guys who ran behind him and the quarterbacks who played behind him would say he was a great player, and we'll probably say that about a lot of these guys moving forward as well.
Absolutely, and we'll get right into that group of four, if you will. That like I asked in another episode, are people still doing Mount Rushmores? I don't want to call it that, but I mean, you could look at it that way a little bit. We're gonna get into Stacy Seeger's background right here. Played from 90 to 93, so a little bit of overlap there with Jeb Flesh. Again, certainly part of the solution, not part of the problem, as things evolved out of the post Danny Ford era. 213 knockdowns, the first team All-American, 35 starts in 41 games, 2,457 plays. Gosh, everybody, if you watch the game, you know what? Here's how I'll put it. He's one of those guys that sometimes would get his name on the broadcast a time or two without having done something wrong because he
Right.
was absolutely just road grading guys away from the line of scrimmage and away from the ball.
Big physical dude.
Yeah.
That's I mean, look, he played while we were in school. And I just remember him being huge, just a huge human being and physical. And like you said, just a great run blocker, which is what Clemson was back then. I mean, it
Mhm.
was a different kind of football. Even, the late 70s era leading into the Danny Ford era, they threw the ball a little bit more
Right.
in that late 70s era with the Bostics and those guys. That group in the 80s and the early 90s of when Danny Ford was the coach, they might throw it 15 times a game on a busy day throwing the ball. So these guys had to be good run blockers, and I just remember Seegers being one of the best.
Yeah, just threw it just enough to make the defense respect the passing
Right.
game and not overstuff the box. And of course, that meant that the O-line guys had to be capable at that. Another one, we got another Stacy on the list. Preceded Stacy Seegers. Connect with us on social media. That's at Clemson Kickoff. Whether you're on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, or Facebook, you'll find us there. This one is Stacy Long, 141 knockdowns, another first team All American, 25 starts in a 40 game career with 1,718 plays. And so you kind of had that Long and Flesh and Seegers kind of progression there as offensive line leaders, keeping it going. And then, things changed a little bit after that, unfortunately, but they were definitely some diamonds in the rough at a time when it was. Uh, in that state of transition between leadership groups.
Stacy Long was a great player.
Oh yeah.
Great offensive lineman. Again, I just remember, how it is. You kind of we all look back on those days when you're younger, and I mean we romanticize those guys and those players, and I just remember him. When I'm in high school, just what a tremendous football player he was, and what he meant to that team, and those teams were going to run it and run it and run it some more, and they had great running backs, and we will talk about running backs in another episode. Well, why do you have good running backs? Because you have good offensive line. You can't have a good running game without having a good offensive line. You can't have a good passing game without having a good offensive line. You can be more physical and you can be technical, and there's different ways to do it, but you can't be any good offensively if you're not good up front.
Yep. It makes everyone it's kind of like the macro version of like nobody really talks about first baseman for their defense, right? But when that first baseman that you have is not only putting the ball over the outfield wall when he's swinging the bat, but he's also picking throws, stretching, scooping, it makes the entire infield defense better because everybody feels like, hey, if I can just get this near our guy, if I can catch this ball and get it in the zip code with the throw, our guy is going to pick it. And I think that's kind of one of the big things with the offensive line. Like, if there was one thing I'd like to see different about the DJ Uyunglele era, quite frankly, it would be that the offensive line hadn't started to drop down beginning with Trevor Lawrence's senior season. Like I think with more protection, like Uiagalelei understood what was happening downfield. He understood the offensive scheme. He understood how to read opposing defenses, spoke elaborately about that, but just couldn't piece it together. I think that clock was just, a little bit too sped up, and you could see even for guys who didn't throw the ball a ton, you could see that difference it made when they had time. I'll go back to Taj Boyd. A lot of games, 9, 10 games a year, they were on point. But every now and then you ran into that Florida State or LSU or Virginia Tech, whoever had that big pass rush, and the entire offense just changed. Like there's a reason there's half your guys on the field are charged with blocking on every play. It really enables the skill guys to get after it. And you can look at Mitch Hyatt, our next name on this list, as another example of that. 2015 to 18, another guy with 2 national titles when John Simpson was in the room. First team All-American. He sets the record for career snaps by an offensive lineman at 3,754. I mean, I think Isaiah Battle was pretty capable, and when Hyatt came on the campus, just took charge of that job, took the starting job, and never looked back. 89 and a half knockdowns in his first 3 seasons. His senior year, they didn't record knockdowns that I could find anywhere. 57 starts in 58 games because he won that job. And there was a little bit of a different way that group went about it, right? With Jay Guillermo, Justin Falconetti, John Simpson. They weren't necessarily trying to get 3 yards of surge off the ball and move the line of scrimmage, but they were trying to be very technical. Some of those guys were former wrestlers, Gage Cervenka and others, and they were looking to really leverage their bodies and be giant human chess pieces and open a spot in the right place at the right time so that someone like Wayne Gallmer or Travis Etienne could hit the hole in the right way and get those short yards they needed and maybe break it open.
Well, look, Bill, he started day one,
Yeah,
right? As a true freshman. How many times do you see that on the offensive line, on any team?
right.
It's just not done very much. So, he came in, he started right away, played, and he was available. How often do you remember him being hurt?
Nope.
Or he's going to miss 2 or 3 games, or he's going to do this, or he's going to do that. Like you said, you don't set career start records because you're hurt all the time. Being available is a huge piece of the puzzle. Now, I would say, to your point about DJ, the offensive line and this dip that Clemson had, where they still won 10 games
After Hyatt left, by the way.
After Hyatt left, is they got worse on the offensive line more than any position during that era.
Yeah.
During that stretch. I mean, not an era. We're still in that same era. But during that stretch, they dipped more on the offensive line than they did any position. But that affects everything that goes along. Everything that goes around that is impacted by how good the offensive line is. Now, I do feel like it got better again last year.
Yep.
It started
absolutely.
back on an uptick last year. And, we'll see with Matt Luke what he can do. He's recruiting like a madman. So I think you saw the offensive line didn't turn the corner, but it turned the corner before the corner to get back in the right direction. And I loved what we saw from the offensive line last year. Hopefully that will continue this year. And I know we'll talk about this year in a minute, but Mitch Hyatt was a great, great player for a long time. Again, I don't know. Was he a superstar? No, he's offensive lineman. But man, to start day one and to play and play and play and play says a lot about him.
For sure, for sure. And I think he also had that ability to kind of, even though he's out there at the end, left tackle out at one side of the line, he kind of had that ability to elevate the room and say, hey, this is what we're all going to do. Like I'm not going to be the one guy out here doing it. We're all going to do this together. And I think under Robbie Caldwell, a lot of good things happened for that offensive line. Again, it wasn't that Alabama, their nemesis then was Alabama in the trenches, and it wasn't that gain 2 yards automatically anytime you want it. but it was that, hey, let's be technical about this. Let's know what we're doing and when to do it, and let's block according to the play that's being called. And Hyatt was certainly key to that. Now, you want a 2, 3, 4 yards automatically guy. That's the number one guy on this list, and that's always going to win out. Not that this is a 1 through 4 ranking, but this guy certainly would qualify as being atop the list, and it's Joe Bostic, brother of Jeff Bostic. They did overlap some. First team All-American Joe Bostic, like I said, almost everybody on this list is. Twice he was All ACC. He was on the 50th anniversary team for the ACC. And then I will say that I knew him more as a Redskin before I realized that he and his brother were both Clemson Tigers. And boy, what a group that was in the NFL. But Joe Bostic did a lot on his own at Clemson and with his teammates around him as a Tigers group to be uh, kind of that prototypical tough guy, capable. You're going to have to do a lot of work if you're going to find a way through him and get to the ball.
Well, we talked about offensive linemen not being famous. The Hogs were famous, and he was
Yeah.
part of that group. Again, that's what happened after Clemson. He's on the 50th anniversary ACC team, right? You don't fall into that. You don't stumble into that. You don't get picked that because of a name. You get picked to that team because you earned it. And he was a great player, just an absolute great player. And we've talked about it with some of the other positions. We'll talk about it with other positions as well. He's in that 75 to 78 year era that kind of set this program up to become something special and meant a lot to that group. So, that the Steve Fuller, Jerry Butlers of the world, those guys don't become that without a good offensive line in front of them. And that started with Joe Bostic during that era.
Yep, just a fantastic time to have been a Clemson Tiger fan, I would imagine, even though I, knew about these guys in orange back then. It was tough to watch a lot of those games, and TV was just so different back then. So
Right.
we didn't have ESPN3 where you just fire up the streaming stick and pick up any game you want. So it was kind of a bummer in that regard. But I'll tell you what, I am really looking forward to seeing this group of guys get more toward uh, that historic presence that the Tigers offensive line has had in years past. I think that this is a group that has a chance to do it. I think they've been very fortunate to fit in really well with Matt Luke coming in as quickly as they managed to all get on the same page together. And then 4 guys coming back, Blake Miller and Tristan Lee at the top of that list. And then in the middle, each of them lining up at tackle at the at edges of that line. Most likely, I mean, some things could shake up, but we have seen Lee play a little bit of guard. I think we all have confidence that Blake Miller could line up anywhere he needed to. And then the emergence of Ryan Linthicum at center last year, and Walker Parks comes back for one more year. And certainly every time he is healthy, this has been a different and more effective group on the field.
Yeah, Bill, I mean, when's the last time, excuse me, Clemson had 4 seniors starting on
Yeah.
the offensive line? I think a couple things. Miller and Lee on the outside, really good. Really good. Miller's been a starter for a long time, has been a big piece of the puzzle. Lee has become a really, really good player. I think they both got pro careers ahead of them. You mentioned Walker Parks. What has he gone through
Yeah.
to get back out on the field
Toughs it
and be
out, man.
and be a piece of this team? But Linthicum was a key to what this team became last year. We talked about center for 2 years.
Yeah.
Who's going to play center? They're moving pieces around to just get somebody to play center. And, he was just kind of in the background. It felt like he was never going to be the guy. He was a big time recruit.
Right.
And it just never worked out. And, there were issues with his weight and, what is he? And is he ever going to play? And then something clicked last year. Is it Matt Luke? Is it whatever? Is it, or is it just Ryan figuring it out.
Yeah.
But that anchor at center that had been missing for a couple of years was there last year. And I think that you have to recognize that as a Clemson fan and say, man, look what he became. And Bill, I know that there's a lot of high hopes for this team. There's a lot of hype. There's, Cade's back at quarterback. There's a lot of receivers. We'll see what the running back group will be. But having this group up front, Colin Sadler is grown into quite a player. Haven't mentioned Harris Sewell yet. He could
Right.
play all across the line as a backup. Elyjah Thurmon, he got thrown into it last year.
Right.
And you remember that game he played, it didn't start, but played early at Virginia Tech because of injuries and held up.
Yeah.
And then got hurt later. And then Brayden Jacobs, true freshman, what is he going to be? It feels like there's a couple things here, Bill. For like 2 years, it felt like there was no depth and there was no consistency.
Yeah.
Like it was every week, it was a different guy starting, and then there was nobody behind them. Well, now it feels like,
hey, check out our website, clemsonkickoff.com. It's got kickoff times. It's got archives of episodes and blogs, some offers. It's a simple resource for you.
Okay, there is some consistency up front. I think we know who the 5 are going to be. Maybe Harris Sewell slides into that guard slot.
Yeah.
But it feels like we know who those 5 are going to be. But there's also guys behind them where you can play 7, 8 guys, 9 guys in a game, and you're not just having to and as you said earlier, roll with 5 guys for an entire game or an entire season, which it felt like Clemson had to do that for a while.
Yeah. And I don't think that just takes a toll third quarter going into fourth quarter, things are dropping down, but also October into November. There's a grind that takes a collective toll on these guys. I mean, it is not easy being an offensive lineman. If I weighed 300 pounds, I don't know that I would want to do it. I certainly appreciate great play, and you can see, unfortunately, the results when there's not great play up there. Just a ton of options now. You had Mason Wade redshirt last year. You had Ronan O'Connell redshirt last year. You've got Tristan Lee, who maybe can move around a little bit if you need to. You've got Easton Ware coming in as a freshman and a much nicer weight now, listed on the Clemson roster at 315 than he had been showing on the recruiting trail. So that's tremendous. How many years have we heard about Dietrich Pennington and all the talent he's got? Is this the year that he can sort of flip that switch, right? Elyjah Thurmon certainly showed what he can do. And then again, you talk about Brayden Jacobs and some of the other true freshmen coming in. They're going to have that ability to compete for spots and to get snaps. And I do think it's going to be important. We didn't see a lot of it in that Robbie Caldwell era. Like I talked about with those guys like Stacy Long, Stacy Seegers, and some of those guys where they were able to rotate in as freshmen and then earn starting jobs going forward. That's going to be something that Clemson finally start to do. And it sure looked like, Matt Luke just made a huge impact by being who he is, right? And when you see those clips of him on social media from Clemson or on YouTube vlogs and what have you, a lot of that awesome programming that comes straight out of the Clemson athletic department, you can see just how engaged and how much energy he brings to the equation with these guys, and sort of taking the foundation of talent that was already there and sort of making it work and making it perhaps fit what Garrett Riley wants to do a little bit better. You could see more effective pulling, right? You could see guys getting out of the blocks on time and getting to their man on time when they had to pull and really execute what that offense is about under Garrett Riley, that air raid or dirt raid or however you want to refer to it. But that's that run heavy spread offense that he wants to run, and that Dabo Swinney will say, hey, that's the Clemson offense. Like that's been going on for a long time, back to Chad Morris and maybe even before that. So it's got to be pulled off the right way up front. And I think last year we saw, I wouldn't say 100% effectiveness, but much closer to it than we had seen in the 3, maybe 4 years prior.
Look, I don't think Clemson has, in this era, has ever been great up on the offensive line, right? They've been really, really good. with the groups that we've talked about, the Hyatt group, and
Mhm.
but they've been effective.
Yeah.
It, for 2 or 3 years, it was Bill. I don't know how they kept winning 10 games.
Mm.
Right? With the offensive line issues that they had, guys
Yeah.
getting hurt, guys not living up to potential, moving pieces, no depth, all that stuff. It's a miracle that they won as many games as they did. But now it feels like that, Matt Luke has with and what a brilliant hire
Yeah.
by Dabo Swinney to convince him to come out of kind of retirement, but to get back in, not retirement, but he had stepped away from coaching, but to get him back in the mix. I've said this. I look at that hire as almost like the Brent Venables hire. It's almost to that level. The Brent Venables hire changed this program.
Right.
And there had been a dip. And I'm not blaming Thomas Austin. Whatever happened on the offensive line, but there
Right.
had been a clear dip in the offensive line play, and it started to get better last year. There were still a lot of injuries last year.
Hmm.
I mean, Thurmon getting thrown into that game at Virginia Tech and the way he handled it,
Yeah.
and then played well after that until he got hurt.
Yeah.
Right. And I think you saw that with some of the inconsistencies last year with the offensive line. Again, I don't think that with the injuries, I think that played a part. I think that played a part in the Georgia game. They didn't really know what they were on the offensive line
Right.
at the time. I just feels like there's a lot more confidence in that group this year than we've had about Clemson's offensive line for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. And I think also confidence in Matt Luke making clear to them, hey, you've gone from breaking 100 to breaking 90 on the golf course. Now you got to break 80, right?
Right, right.
And it's harder to take that next step. But I feel like he's the kind of coach who can make sure that they do the things through that. One other thing I want to back up to, and you mentioned that Mitch Hyatt group, that 2015-18 group, John Simpson, all those guys, and you know when my lovely wife decided, yes, we're going to the title game in Phoenix. We're going to stay with friends. She had an angle on face value tickets, and we took full advantage of that. And we found some airfare that wasn't going to kill us, and we made it out there. I didn't know how that offensive line group was going to stack up against Alabama's defensive line and that front seven. And it was really, I won't say frightening, but it was really an area of concern. Like, I don't think anyone on the schedule had approached what Alabama was known to be in that front seven. And when they held their own and it was clear, and I might not know all the X's and O's of how they did it and where they went. I
Right.
only know the generalities, much like you were talking about, but I walked out of that stadium not feeling like the offensive line was the problem at all, not feeling like the defensive line was either. And of course, Alabama's O lines were legendary in that stretch. And I just walked out of that stadium as the Crimson Tide faithful were celebrating, and I thought we're going to be back because of how the trenches were. And it was easy to have a lot of confidence in that defensive line that year, but that offensive line looking as good as they did against an opponent like that, to me, that was a big difference. And that's what told me that the Tigers had some staying power to what they were doing. So,
Well, and then the 2018 offensive line dominated Alabama.
yeah, yeah,
Trevor Lawrence, how many times did he get hit
not a
in that
lot,
championship game?
not a
Right?
lot.
I don't think he got sacked. He may have
I don't
gotten
think he
hit,
did.
but he
He was
didn't
good
get
at
sacked.
getting it out on time
Right.
too. There were some
And
pressures, but not a lot.
that's a part of the
Yeah,
offense too. I get
yeah.
that. But that offense, again, it was a veteran group. They played really well. This is a veteran group. And if this group can stay healthy, that's the key to anything happening good for Clemson this year offensively.
You know what, Daniel? We somehow are up against our time limit here on our
On
subscription.
offensive line.
Talking about offensive line, where else are you going to get that but the Reign Supreme podcast, Reign Supreme Always podcast season 4? I'm so excited that we had all this talk about offensive line. I can't even get the title of our podcast right. How about that? So we're going to keep doing these. Get through all the major position groups on the team. For the season previews and as well as the best of all time. And we hope you're enjoying this. I think it's a great way to go back and sort of put things in perspective and think back on the history of Clemson football. So until we do it again in our next episode, I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Go Tigers.